sipping on.
Hello and welcome back to the After Hours podcast. For this week's episode, we will be tuning in and interviewing the man, the myth, the legend himself, Zach from Manhattan's Pub and Cheer. So this was a very long episode. It was approximately 4 hours long. So we are most definitely going to be cutting it into two different parts. So for this first week, we are going to be showing you the first half of the episode, and then we will be releasing the second half this upcoming week. So stay tuned for that. Enjoy this week, and let's get cracking.
It's crazy times, man.
Yeah, it really is.
I actually remember being back here last November. That was like one of the first times we saw you.
Yeah.
So
That is true.
I was so happy to chat with you guys.
Oh,
I
yeah.
probably gave it to you.
No, that was a great time, and we've been thinking about that, like how awesome it's going to be to go back to networking events. I know you had them here like every month or so.
Just about every month we had the Startup Toledo events, and then those kind of transitioned into a different something different, and we were kind of, there was talk, and we were starting to get a new networking. It might have been, you guys might have been associated with it, but
Jumpstart and
Jumpstart. That's right.
Yep.
And we were hoping to try and get that monthly thing because it was really neat to be able to see the different groups working on these technology things, or just the, how much more clever can you make networking, and being able to share that with a group of from the public and say, here's what we're working on, and then have discussion about it, have some feedback on it. And I thought those were great way to get those not very well known ideas out there into the public's eye and say, hey, here's something that's being worked on. It's pretty cool,
And especially with the networking events we went to here, there were some pretty big names in Toledo at almost every one of them. Anybody from recent college grads, or even some people in college, all the way up to people who are 50, 60, 70 years old. So it's nice to see like a diverse group of people coming to them as well.
yeah, and then you have people that are of all ages that are at different careers in their life. I mean, you can have an entrepreneur that's a little bit older, and then you could also have like a CEO that's 35. Right. And it's just always nice to see those exchanges that that transcend like what like a boomer or like a Zoomer is. Sure. You know what I mean? To put it into like comedic terms.
The Zoomer generation.
He loves using those
That's
words.
funny. I like that.
It's true though. I mean, but no, we always love going to those events. Those are so good. Can't wait for them again.
Yeah.
Soon, hopefully.
And they will be back.
Yep.
Eventually.
It's weird.
It needs to be known how easily and how badly you can hemorrhage just by having a slowdown. Really, the slowdown began with the change of the weather in October, but we were still able to cobble together strong business in October. It really wasn't until Governor DeWine said, I may or may not shut you down this week. And all of a sudden our business is in the toilet and we're losing money hand over fist.
Is it the uncertainty factor?
It's the fear.
Oh, okay.
It's not uncertain. We have a light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know how long the tunnel is. It's there with vaccination and or herd immunity. The roaring 20s will happen at a certain point because people are going to be so ready to burst out of their homes, burst out of their hours restriction. I mean, think of all the people that work in the food service industry, that work second shift jobs, that when they get done with work, they have to go home, which is nice, and home life is all good and fine, whatever, but people need a place to blow off steam, to sit and decompress and relax, meet up with friends, talk about nothing. You've been working all day talking about very important things that matter to your business, things that matter to your boss or to the people that work under you. And it requires a focus. It requires a dedication to the business that once you get to the end of that, the last thing you want to do, most people, is go home and, home life has its own stresses. There's the upkeep of the house, there's laundry, there's dishes, there's spending time with your spouses or your children, and that all requires a focus that isn't relaxation, that isn't decompression. It's a whole nother set of work. Granted, that's far more enjoyable than work, but it doesn't allow your mind to turn off and to talk about meaningless things and shoot the breeze with your friends.
Oh, you light it up, bro.
Oh yeah, we're explicit.
Shoot that fucking shit with your friends.
Right.
Damn. Maybe have a drink and a half, too many to give yourself a little mental lift. It's a mental health issue, and I see it in my staff. For the 20 minutes or half hour that we can sort of sneak by legally and allow us to have a drink and a cocktail after we kick everybody out by 10 o'clock. The look on people's faces when you say, 5 minutes from now, I'm taking your drink and I'm kicking you out. And I don't really care where you go, but you're supposed to go home. Right. And then it's like, boom, all of a sudden the place is empty and it's 10 o'clock. We're all used to being still working for 4 more hours, let alone awake for 5 more. So it's mental health wise, it's so important that people have that option to be able to go somewhere that's not work and not home and relax. And it's like a gift when we get to sit at the bar with the lights off. We're sitting there in the dark, sipping on our little cocktail, and it's almost more depressing, that we have to hide and not be able to really enjoy the fact that we're not working,
right?
And we're not traveling to home or being at home. It's tough, and I definitely feel for think about all the workers at the Jeep plants
that's
that
what I was gonna say. 100%.
Huge factor of the workforce in Toledo. They're working the second shift and they get out at 11 and they're like, I gotta go home to wake up and putz around at home for a few hours before I have to go to work and then go straight back home. That's got to drain people.
I was going to say, I've seen kind of both sides of the coin. I actually worked at the Jeep plant and being like a college student for both times working like second shift. Those people, there's a few thousand people who get off 10, 11 p.m. They want to go right out to the bar. Almost half of them go right out to the bar after. And then same, being a college student, you see 10 o'clock, like most of the time before Corona, you weren't even out yet until 10:30, 11 is when most people started going out. Right. So it's just insane to see, both sides and see how so much has changed.
Thirsty Thursday, that's like a 10 p.m. unofficial start.
That's what I'm saying.
We got nicknames for every day of the week. Monday's fun day, Tuesday's get used day, Wednesday's men's day, Thursday's hers day, Friday and Saturday of the weekend they don't need a nickname, and Sunday is, what do we call it? It was something dumb like full moon on the half breast or. Sunday's fun day.
Ours are a little different. What Monday is?
Monday.
Is it mimosas?
No.
Mimosa Monday.
I can't remember. We had Tequila Tuesday, whiskey.
Taco or Tequila Tuesday, whatever you prefer.
Yeah. Whiskey Wednesdays.
Whiskey Wednesday. Thirsty Thursdays.
No introduction needed there.
Yeah. And then Friday was just. Like you said, Friday, Saturday.
Friday was like synonymous with like socials too, though.
Yeah,
it was like Social Friday.
Yeah,
because like that's when like a lot of the Greek organizations like held events or whatever.
Yeah,
and then Sunday fun day as always.
Sunday.
so the hours restrictions have really put up several different challenges. It's not that that we have to get people out of here and close up by 10. As a restaurant, I've fared a little bit better than traditional bars. For bars like Wesley's and the Attic that are more bar centric, it's crushing them because, like you guys said, 10:30 is when people start really coming out and the bars start really getting busy, and they do most of their sales between 10 and 2. Restaurants, that's great. We've been able to really do the hardcore sales up until 10 o'clock, but the idea that time frame is shrunk to, let's call it 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. To be able to do the amount of food business for us to be survivable, you've already taken away all the sales we do from 10 to 2. That's hard enough. But as a restaurant, we've already got the kind of the front-loaded sales, whereas a bar is just waiting for 10 o'clock, please, 10 o'clock, get here so we can get busy and have a great time. Happy hour, it's not really a huge moneymaker for bars because you're doing things at a discount. Just get butts in the seats. Yeah. You know, it's reminding people, hey, at 10 o'clock when you really want to do some drinking at full price, we're going to be here. Well, that's not the case. But as far as restaurants go, those food sales that I was doing from 10 p.m. till, well, let's call it 9:30 because we're basically closing the kitchen at 9:30, saying last orders, because whether they get their food at 10:58 or not, they've got to be out by 10. So let's get their food made by 9:30 so that they can have a little time to eat it before we kick them out. Also compressing all the business that we need to do in those 5 little hours is so difficult and next to impossible. Because you can't really take a reservation because one reservation can really screw up as much as you're able to seat your dining room. If you got that block of 6 or 8 people in the center of, like, say they want a 6:30 reservation, well, you can't seat that table from 5:30 to 6:30. So you've lost that table, not just for the 2 hours that they're there, but the 2 hours before, and who knows if they want to sit and stay longer. So you can't reserve that table. So we've had to go to no reservations and first come, first serve so that we can as efficiently as possible. Well, that's keeping people away. People call every day. Can I make reservations? No, I'm sorry. We can't do reservations because it's too challenging with our limited capacity. And, people are coming all at once at 8 o'clock. And we've got it's between 6 and 8, it's crickets. And so I'm starting to cut staff. I go down from 5 servers down to 2 or 3. And then at 8 o'clock, we get flooded and completely fucking slammed. And now we're falling on our faces like we don't know what we're doing. And we've got to get it all done in this 2 hours. And you can't really turn a dining room over more than once in that little time period. Right. So it's just, on the front end, on the back end, on staff, on turnover, on every aspect, this is next to impossible conditions.
And from everything we've been told from previous podcasts, you make a lot of your money on the alcohol side, not as much on the food side too.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it since day one. For changing reasons over the last 18 years, I've said I'll never do a restaurant again. It's gone from, well, it's just too fucking hard. All right, this is a really, really hard business. And number 2, it's almost impossible to actually make money on it. But what it does is it puts butts in the seats that will buy alcohol, which you do make money on. So if you can break even on your food, that was kind of our theory for the first several years.
You guys have great food.
Well, thanks, and that's no small task either. You know how easy it would be to make money on a freezer full of shit that I can pull out, open the bag up, dump it in the fryer, and call it my food.
Yeah.
That's not
you guys
food.
You guys don't do that.
That's not. No, we do as much. Okay, I do have one thing I keep in the freezer. It's sliced raw kettle chips. They've been cut for us.
Exposed.
We do open those bags up. We fry up those chips. We season them ourselves and call them our chips. Lies. Complete lies. Everything else we do as fresh as possible and source as locally as possible. Now, there's places like Fowl and Fodder that are hardcore. I'm going to just buy absolutely as much local as I can. I don't have that kind of time. Nor do I have the budget for it. It's expensive to purchase local.
Going off of that, their menu's also pretty, an egg is pretty expensive there as well.
Yeah, and you know what? It's absolutely worth the price you're paying for that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
My clientele is a much more broad appetite spectrum. That's why we have so many different styles of things on the menu. And, in a way that's slightly by design, because we wanted to give the New York experience. And originally we had started off with Italian American, mostly because it's got such a wide appeal and it's really easy to do Italian style food and combine that with some American cuisine. And as it was only a year or 2 in before we were like, why are we even bothering with this Italian BS? Let's just call it gourmet American or American casual, whatever label you want to put on it. And the idea being to offer all kinds of different styles and ethnicities, because that's what New York's all about. It's a complete melting pot of fashion, of cuisine, of people, and one of the organic things that has always been one of my favorite most New York things about Manhattans is the people. The people that come here are so differently colored, so differently income based. From people that are they just have enough to get the $6 Slammy in there, and they're gonna love that. All the way up to the people that really wish we had a more expensive steak, that kind of thing. And I love that melting pot, and I love the cheers aspect of when you walk in, you don't feel like you got to put on airs because that guy over there is wearing shorts, but that guy over there is wearing a tux. So I could be whatever the hell I want to be, And that was exactly the motivation to try and cultivate that kind of crowd and reflect that in the food. I can tell you it went completely wrong. Because at one point, about 6 or 7 years ago, I went to the National Restaurant Food Show in Chicago with my cousin. We'd go and spend the day in the afternoon at the food show. It was just incredible how many different everything restaurant there was, from equipment to foods to gadgets, and it was certainly an incredible experience on that. But it was what happened afterwards. We'd wear jeans and a t-shirt to the food show, and we'd go home and we'd put our suits on. And we'd go back to the hotel and we'd put our suits on, and then walk around Chicago like we're ballers, like we were, okay, maybe not that pompous attitude, but it did look, it did feel good to put on my one suit. I have one suit. I still have one suit. To put on my suit.
Makes three.
and I had bought this suit in anticipation of this trip. I was like, I want a nice suit that I can wear in Chicago. So we put on our suits and we go, and we'd go to the first bar, and I'd be hanging out there, and I guess this was about 10 years ago. I'm time framing it because I was single at the time, and it was important. It's important to note that in case my wife ever listens to this.
Not tangle of lies or anything.
Right. This was before I had met and started dating my then to be wife. We'd go and we'd be hitting on girls, and every single night we were there for 4 nights. Every single night, I'd be making progress. We went to this place called the Redhead Piano Bar, and lo and behold, we're talking to 2 redheads, right? And after a while, if you knew my cousin, this is completely in his character. He'd lean over and whisper in my ear and say, "This is lame. I'm out of here." And I was like, "Oh, what? No. We've got the. What do you do? What do you mean? For what? You're going off somewhere to find what? What we're doing right now? That's what you would leave to go find, right?" And he's like, "No, I'm out of here." And he'd ditch me. He'd ditch me and leave me there. And it would shatter my confidence, and I'd completely fall apart, chatting up these girls. And before you know it, I'm bored, and so I make an excuse to leave. I was leaving the Redhead Piano Bar, and I was really kind of feeling down. Like, my cousin ditched me. I don't know Chicago at all. This is terrible. And I'm standing there in my suit, and I look up, and across the street there's a line of people outside of a nightclub or a lounge. And in my head, I started hearing the Saturday Night Fever. And I was like, you know what? I look good. I feel good. I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to walk right in, past the line.
Oh, shit.
I did. I was like, nobody here knows me. Who cares? If I don't make it, no big deal. I walked up, I kind of nodded at the guy, flashed my ID, and walked right past him into the club. Didn't pay any cover, didn't have to stop and get checked, And these people, I'm talking 20, 30 people deep on the line outside. And they're just kind of looking at me like, who's this guy? And I was like, I don't know, who am I? So I go in there. So the whole point of telling the Chicago thing is that we were able to experience some finer dining places. We got 2 different places. We had the 7 or 8 course chef's dinner, and I was just so impressed by the quality of the food and the service presentation and every aspect of this. I thought, you know what? I'm tired of feeling like my restaurant is half-assed. I want to do this fine dining thing. One of the cool things about Chicago was that you can't suck there. You've got to be good, because the guy next door who's doing probably exactly the same thing you're doing is going to kill you business-wise if if you're not at the top of your game. And so it was just everything, everywhere we went, from casual food all the way up to fine dining, was just so good and so well thought out and well produced. And I wanted to do that. And so for a year and a half, we switched over to fine dining and synchronized service. We'd make sure all the dishes came up into the window at the same time, and I'd gather up the staff for 10 seconds, and we'd grab all the dishes, we'd all walk, and everybody would set the plate down at the same time. We did white tablecloths, and we were getting really good at it. But as we improved and as we got really, really good, the food was amazing. The service was, there were people that would be sitting at the table, and as we were doing it, they'd say, "This is what I was telling you about," that kind of thing. And it was cool. But as we were getting really good, and about a year and a third in, or a year and a quarter in, it was crickets. There was nobody was coming. I couldn't figure it out. The food is right. The service is right. We've never had to worry about the ambiance. The building gave us that before we even really figured out how best to use it. And I couldn't figure it out. And ultimately, we realized that it just wasn't what the people that came here wanted. That's not what they were looking for. They appreciated it, and it wasn't that expensive. It wasn't that much more expensive than the prices we had been charging. But it wasn't. They wanted to come here and relax. They wanted a cheers. They wanted to sit here and socialize. They didn't want to feel like they had to be well behaved, or classy. And we took a hard left turn and stuck with the fresh aspect and decided to go completely pub fare and pub style food. And it was like that. We were busy and slammed, and have been since. And it was really a revelation moment of, you have to understand what your crowd wants. It's almost impossible to try and cultivate a crowd that you think you should be having. And instead, look at the people that have been paying your bills from day one, the people that have been coming out and have become your regulars. What do they actually want? And what they wanted was a neighborhood pub. And the more we've embraced that feel, that concept, the busier and more solid our business has been. And I've never ever been able to successfully walk past a line at a club ever again. I've always had to pay the cover.
That's a great story.
I mean, it tells you how far you can get with just confidence in a nice suit.
Well, yeah, confidence in a nice suit. But I mean, it really came down to, how do you present yourself? And I learned a lesson when I was in college from the head of the theater department. And he said, a lot of people, when they go flying, when they go traveling and they get on an airplane, they're wearing comfortable clothes because it's already an uncomfortable space. You might as well have comfortable clothes on. He says, but I never do that. He says, I always wear first class business attire. And he said, the reason for that is often I can go up to the counter and say, do you happen to have any extra seating in business? And he says, most times I will get that upgrade without having to pay for it. And it's because of the way I dressed, because of the way I presented myself. And, I also learned that lesson at St. Francis, where I went for high school. The way you learn is so different when you're wearing a tie versus I was homeschooled from 4th grade to 8th grade, and I was not allowed to wear my pajamas. I had to put clothes on. And, there was a difference when she would just say, whatever, wear whatever you want. And I'd come and we'd start learning. And I learned so much differently versus what I was wearing made so much of a difference on how the people perceive you, and on how you learn, and how, on everything. So that's why it was so important that I dress my staff casually. Now, the confidence that you get and the image that you're putting off definitely make a huge difference. I never thought it would work. I couldn't believe it.
Well, I feel you 100%. Every exam I ever had in college, I'd always wear my suit, or I'd wear a nice dress pants and a nice buttoned-up shirt. Everybody'd be like, "Dude, why are you dressed up today?" I'm like, "It's an exam." They're like, "But why?" I'm like, "If you look confident and you feel confident, it's gonna show on your exam."
Shit, yeah. You got an 8 a.m. class. Everyone showed up to that class in pajamas and sweatpants.
I showed up in a suit. I really
Yeah.
did though. If even 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., like if I had an exam that day or if I had something important to do, I'd show up looking as nice as I could, just because if you look confident and you feel confident, you're just going to be confident. I mean, 100%.
Or if you were in that class learning what you learned stoned, show up to the exam stoned, and you'll remember everything. I mean, that
is what they say. That is what they say. Also, I mean, two sides of the coin again.
I did show up to. I was in theater in college, and I did show up to my ballet one final, still drunk. We had stayed up real late partying studying. And showed up to that, and man, I bombed it. It actually, because of that, I had to come back for an extra quarter.
Really?
Yeah.
So did you end up getting your degree?
One of them. I was going for 2.5 degrees. So I was going for the Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Communication Arts, concentration musical theater, and then a French minor. Well, because of the teaching that I got at St. Francis in French, I tested out of third year. So I never actually had to take a French class to get my French minor in college.
There you go.
Which was awesome. I did take. I was a triple major when I first started, and I thought, hey, I've got like 3 classes to finish my major, and it had just been long enough that when I think it was junior year when I took my first French course, it was just like, I have no idea I can't understand a word you're saying.
What does G mean?
Yeah, what do you got here? And so I was like, I dropped out of that class and I said, well, I've already got the minor, so I'll leave it. And I got most of my computer science degree done. I think I had 5 classes to finish the Bachelor of Science, and I was bombing. As a senior, I was just losing so much interest in school that I wasn't putting the time necessary to have that, to work on these higher level computer science classes. The C language killed me. Unix killed me. I just couldn't understand it. I was a master at C++, but that was all graphical. There was some coding. I learned at least a dozen programming languages. I could program in all kinds of different languages, but somehow when I got to C and Unix, I just couldn't get it.
A little different story.
Yeah, it was different. And so that, coupled with being a senior and really getting true senioritis, I bombed those 5 classes I never finished. And I left after completing my BFA. I left for New York for 2 years, and when I came home, tried to take those last 5 classes at UT, and I started out with 1, and it was computer architecture.
Oh no!
And I had no idea what the heck was going on. I was like, well, you know what? I'm cool with it. I'm probably not going to make a career out of my computer science degree. It was really just in case I didn't make it in theater.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't make it in theater, and didn't have the computer degree. When I was a junior, they said my professor says, I think you all should be aware of the fact that everything you have learned up to this point and everything you will learn for the next 2 years will be way obsolete by the time you actually get to the job market.
For computer science?
For computer science. And I was like, really? Like, man, that is so demoralizing. Why would you say that? See? So I'm going to have to learn everything I need to know just to get a job? Oh, man.
Just to have the
C
next to your name.
Yeah.
C++ is still around nowadays, and it's, 15, 20 years later?
Yeah.
So...
I mean, Joey, how's your computer science degree going?
Not too well.
Are they still teaching?
Cut that out.
Are you still learning COBOL?
No, ours was mainly object oriented, so it was mostly JavaScript, and EEs have to take C, I believe, either C or C+.
Electrical engineers.
Yeah, and then CSEs had to take just all object oriented. Don't really learn much besides that.
Yeah.
But I feel you in the same senioritis boat.
Yeah. I wish I had put the time in. I really could have probably relatively easily passed and finished that degree, but.
All right. Well, now I'm interested. So you said you lived 2 years in New York.
Did.
Was that trying to make it as like an artist, musician?
An actor.
Okay.
I was attempting to be an actor, and I had spent 2 or 3 weeks. I had the summer before I was really kind of trying to set myself up to be in the audition, to really be on the audition circuit and work my way onto a Broadway stage. Okay, ultimate dream goal would be originating a role on Broadway.
Yeah.
My entire theater career from high school to, I started in theater in high school and became my major in college. My history in the roles that I had played was you would listen to the original Broadway cast recording and make your voice sound like what you were hearing. So I was basically an imitation actor. The book and the script and the scenes and all the acting, those were all I had to originate and create that character. But when it came to the song, I was running in my head, I was running through what I had heard and trying to imitate the way they had sang it. It's next to impossible because Broadway singers are phenomenal, dynamic talents. So to be able to actually imitate well what they were doing, not very good. So I can be honest and admit I don't think I was very good. Even after having a really solid education at Ohio Northern, I felt prepared, and I felt like I was good enough to break into some shows, some regional and off-Broadway shows, and those would teach me what I needed to do to be on Broadway. And when years later, after I had moved home and the restaurant was began, I looked back on that and realized I was not very good at all. I was a terrible actor. I sang well, and I danced okay. I would never call myself a dancer. I was an actor who moved well. I could be taught to do things that looked like dancing, and I did partner dancing really well. And so I was utilized a lot in dances that required partner dancing. But, it was never really my strong point, nor was acting. And singing was my strong point. And without acting, or even some dancing, singing is kind of useless unless you're closing your eyes listening to the recordings. And it really wasn't until I had returned home and started doing some shows for the Rep and seeing myself on recordings that I was like, gosh, I spent that much on the education for that? I'm not good at all. I was pretty disappointed with myself. I was pretty disappointed with what I thought was somebody that could be hireable, and then realized that the only gigs I got in New York, I got 3 gigs. 3 actual theater gigs in New York, and one was 2 of them were through a director that had come to Ohio Northern and done a couple of shows that I was in, and so thought of me when they were doing these 2 shows and brought me in.
Are you from Ada? Or?
No, I'm from Toledo. I grew up in South End.
Gotcha.
St. Francis.
St. Francis.
Okay,
sir.
Yeah, and went to Ohio Northern, mostly because when I went to visit the campus, and I was in the running for a decent theater scholarship, and the director who directed most of the shows I was in, she was like, because I went there to audition for their program, and she says, "Oh yeah, we've got these great shows, Jesus Christ Superstar and West Side Story," and it's just like she just listed off 2 of my very top favorite shows that I really wanted to be in. She's like, "You'd make a really great riff for Tony," which were the 2 leads in West Side Story. I was like, "Well, I think I should go here. I think I should go here. Beautiful theater, awesome program, and as a freshman, I'd have opportunities to do roles where every other theater, program that I had looked into, you had no hope of having a role or especially a lead as a freshman or even a sophomore. It was like junior and senior year, that's when you're good enough to get roles. And here was an opportunity that I could jump right in as a freshman and get roles. And I did. I had leads as a freshman. And it's probably part of what fueled my ego into thinking that I was good enough to break into New York theater. But
why do they? I feel like that's such a weird restriction to put on like freshman and sophomore. Like, is it because they don't have the talent or like the understanding?
I feel like it's like the same as like sports. You know, a lot of like freshmen and sophomore don't really get the opportunity to play unless
But if you're like you're
really
God-given
unless you're really good.
Right.
You know. So.
From what I could gather, it was more of a seniority thing. Like, you haven't earned your way. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you haven't earned your way by doing these chorus roles, you know, you have to be this, and this is reality. You have to be a very good chorus person. You have to understand and observe how people are leading the show. Leads lead, and that holds true in business. You know, the people at the top, they set the example. Their behavior determines what the rest of the cast is going to do. And as a lead and as a chorus person, I watch that on both ends of the spectrum, where you have crappy leads, and not for talent, but just the way that they behave during rehearsals and getting the show put on its feet. If they were lazy about it and half-assed it, and the only time they really showed their potential was on show nights, the rest of the cast is just shit, just complete shit. They didn't care. They didn't hit their marks. You have to hit the exact same spot every time you do a certain song or a scene. You have to be in that spot for the sake of your other actors, for the sake of where they've put the lights and focused the lights. You have to be in your spot at all times. You can't mess that up. And when a lead didn't care about that, the rest of the cast is like just sloppy, you know. And there's a polish that comes from a well-led show and a well-directed show that you could see that the leads affected that so vastly. And as a chorus person, after getting leads my freshman year, and then kind of being, I'd grown arrogant as a freshman, and coming in as a sophomore, the powers that be thought, well, he needs to be knocked down a peg. Let's put him in chorus for several shows and see if that changes him. And it did. And, I just realized that every person on this stage, every person in these productions is so crucial to get it right. There's a show called Sweeney Todd. And there's so many different characters that matter so much to this show. And, many in very surprising ways. And I won't give out any spoilers, but it's such a difficult show for each and every cast person in the show. And I had a smaller role in that show, but I was involved in several of the chorus numbers, and just how specific and how perfect every aspect of that show had to be was made even stronger by very strong leads, very precise, talented leads that saw the responsibility on their shoulders. And that's it's just the way that that theater works. And I think I really, in those shows that I was able to do in New York, I was able to really relish those chorus roles and realize just how special it was just to be a part of a production. And
Sweeney Todd, that's a murder mystery, correct?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's what would you call it?
I've never seen
more
it,
of a
so I
it's
don't
more
really
of a
know.
dinner murder mystery.
Okay.
Without giving it away, the idea is this barber who had been thrown in jail by the judge, who was trying to steal his wife. So he throws him in jail. 18 years later, he comes back, and under the name Sweeney Todd, it used to be called Benjamin Barker. He comes back under the name of Sweeney Todd, goes back to his barber shop, and finds his shaving knives and restarts his barber shop, and uses it as a way to lure in the judge and everybody involved with the judge's actions 18 years ago to kill them. The bodies start piling up, and they've got to find a way to get rid of these bodies. They can't just burn them because that smell will be smelled by everybody in town. So they end up using them in the meat pies in the shop underneath his barber shop. Yeah, so people are raving about these lovely meat pies, and it's humans. It's people.
Authentic all-American.
Yeah.
All-American.
It sounds like a pretty good show. I'll have to give it a watch.
They did a good job with the movie with Johnny Depp. He did a nice job. If you really want to see, Hal Prince was the director who really was most successful with the production on Broadway, and it was just genius staging, just brilliant the way the sets moved, and the whole show worked around the story. George Hearn was was Sweeney Todd in that production, and just magic. You can really, I mean, the way he characterizes the pain and the anger and the revenge that he's going through, it's just like, yeah, I mean, killing people and eating them, but yeah, you know?
Right. So when you came back from New York, is that when you originally started Manhattan?
I did. I had, 2 years of occasional auditions. I could have auditioned more and should have auditioned more. And I really kind of got into this rhythm of working at a restaurant. I worked at places like the Olive Garden, Times Square, and that was an easy jump because I had been working at the Olive Garden in Lima, which was near Ada, and I was able to basically just go through the 1 week training, and I didn't have to audition. I didn't have to apply for the job. It was basically a direct transfer, and then I just had to train on what wines and differences they might have had at the Times Square location. So it was like a built-in job, and I was making like $80 a day, and it was like, and so I'd basically go to the bar, go to our O'Flaherty's, was a place where me and my buddies would go and play darts and drink $80 worth of things, and you'd wonder, how am I going to pay rent at the end of the month? Like, and
but just one more drink.
Just one more, yeah. One more $5 beer. The cheapest beer they had was $5. Jeez. I mean, this was back in 2000, 2001, and a Heineken was $7.50. It was expensive. Yeah. So you go find the deals, the $4 beers, the $5 pints of beer.
Should go to Jed's on Friday.
So I could have auditioned more. I should have auditioned more and done more, focusing on the theater. And instead, I think I was more focused on trying to live and survive in New York City. I wanted to stay there. I didn't want to come back. I wanted to make a career there. I wanted to make a life there. In the process, I worked at several different restaurants and bars, and in the process, I got a really good education on what the restaurant industry is all about. 9/11 happened, and I was living in Bridgewood, Queens, which is just just across the river, and 45-minute subway ride into Midtown. And 9/11 happened, and I had actually been looking for work for a month or two before that, so I was in kind of hard times. And my roommate at the time had been kind of supporting me. He had a job on the Lower East Side and was doing okay enough to kind of pay rent and give me $20 spending money on a daily basis, while I was out there looking for work. And there was nothing else for me to do because I didn't have any money. So I had gotten a job at a place called the Cub Room in Soho, which is a handful, 20, 30 blocks north of, if that much, of the Trade Center. And so I was supposed to start a job there that day. And I wasn't due in until, I think 11 a.m. So I was kind of sleeping. No, I wasn't due there until the afternoon. And so I was sleeping. My roommate comes in into the apartment and says, "You need to wake up." I was like, "What? No. She goes, "No, you need to wake up. Something's happening, some planes." And I was like, "No, this is a dream, right?" And we didn't have a TV, so I'm like pulling up my computer and trying to refresh the browser, and it's like, why isn't this working? Nothing was, and sure enough, there it was. And so 9/11 happened, and it sucked. Later that afternoon, when the subway started running again, I caught the first subway down and walked into the place I was supposed to start, and I said, "I'm sorry, I'm late." Obviously, there's a reason. And the guy was like, immediately said, I think we lost a lot of customers, and we're not going to take on any new staff. I'm sorry. I was like, you don't understand. I've been looking for work, and I need this job. No dice. And so for the next 2 months, I was like daily pounding the pavement trying to find a job, and was not being successful at all. And I finally, in mid-December, the pile of rubble is still burning at that point, mid-December, and I'm still looking for work. And I finally walked in, and I had a different roommate at the time.
Whoever your last roommate was seemed like a pretty great guy.
Yeah.
Or girl. I don't know who it was.
Well, it was a girl at the time of 9/11, and shortly after that was my buddy, and he kept me propped up while I was looking for work. And so mid-December, after not succeeding at finding work, I finally said to him, I got to go home. I'm going to go home, make some money, and I'll be back in a couple months. I don't want to. I'm certainly not going home to Toledo to stay. There's nothing there for me to stay for. So I'm gonna make some money and I'll come back. And he says, "Hey, I could use a change of scene. I've grown up. I've spent my whole life in New York." And he grew up just across the river in New Jersey. He says, "I got to get out of this city. It's really draining me." I was like, he's like, "Can I come with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't see why not. Let's go. We'll go get a couple of jobs in Toledo, make up some money, and hightail it back." And that was the plan. And it took us 14 hours to drive with our trailer loaded up. We had come home and grabbed the van and the trailer, the lawn trailer. I'd done some. My first real business was a lawn company I'd done in college. And we still had the trailer at home. So I grabbed that trailer. We loaded everything on that trailer and into the van. And we made one last stop up in the Bronx to visit Billy, who got us some weed. And we hightailed it. By hightailed it, I mean we took 14 hours for what should have been a 9-hour trip. And, we'd
back to you just got the weed.
And we'd actually... dumb. We had this little weed plant that I'm talking 6, maybe 7 inches tall, that we had in a styrofoam bowl with some dirt that we had brought on the van. And literally by the time we got home, this thing had died. I didn't know a plant could die that fast. It's incredible.
It's impressive.
But yeah, it was we'd been here a week or two. And I had called up Manos Pascalis, who, from Manos' Greek restaurant, who I had known as a kid. We went to the Catholic Club church services as a kid. They were like an informal church service. And so I had known Manos pretty well and knew his presence in downtown. He owned a lot of property and his restaurant. I called him up. I said, "Hey, I cannot live at my parents' house. Do you have any buildings downtown? I don't care if you have any amenities, whatever, just an empty space that I'll set up camp and make it my home for this short time that I'm going to be here." And he's like, "Oh, yeah." I said, "By the way, do you have a job?" A job? Like,
yeah, does that room come with a job?
Yeah. He says, "Oh, yeah, you can work in what is now the attic. They would use for lunchtime business meetings." Translation: once or twice a week, there would be people up there. So I'd basically, for $2-3 an hour, was wasting my days waiting for anybody to have a business meeting up here, please.
So you would just would you just stand there what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would clean. There's just
as much as you could,
30 years, 20 years of grime. Because it was not a very often used space, So the bar was there and everything. So I just go around and just clean stuff and look out the windows at the neighborhood, this depressing, boring neighborhood of nothing. What is that building over there? That is a ridiculous looking building. So he happened to be there that day. I said, "Hey, Manos, what is the deal with that ridiculous looking building over there? That is goofy. He goes, oh, yeah. I own that building. I use it for storage. He said, you should open a restaurant there. And I laughed at him. I said, oh, no, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to be saving some money. Maybe not at this job where I'm making no money. Saving up some money, and as soon as I can, I'm getting back to New York. He goes, yeah, well, you open a restaurant there, it'd take you 2-3 months to get open, and you're making money. You go to New York whenever you want. And I was like, huh, I like that. Sounds nice.
Killed the accent, by the way.
I know.
That was phenomenal. Holy.
I'm like, nah, it's a terrible idea, Mono. So about a week later of this continuing, and mind you, it was both me and my roommate, Mike, who had come back with me, both of us working day shift up there.
Oh, he was working there
to
too.
nothing. Yeah, for nothing, right? And I said to him, a week later, I go to Mono, so I say, hey, you want to just show me that building? I want to see what it's like on the inside. What's it like? He goes, oh, yeah, bravo. So it was, he takes both Mike and I, we come in here, and as we came in the front door, now, there was no front vestibule. It was just, flat building, no patio, and 5 doors along the front. It was this one, and 2 in the next section, 1, 2 in the next section, and a 5th one. And, it was like, as we walked in the door, it was like one of those weird dreams where you just kind of have this vision of, whoa, I can see how this will work. I can see what this could be. And I was really excited. I got super excited. I called up my dad. I said, hey, Dad, Mono's got this building. He's just like, no. Now, years before, he had gotten into a building with Monos that they had gone half and half on. And in high school, a buddy and I had cleaned out, a lot of the trash that was in this building. And they had intended to turn it into apartments and whatnot. And nothing ever really came of it. So my dad was like, no, I've done buildings with Monos. I'm not even going to entertain this. I'm like, oh, all right. He goes, you need to save up some money and move back to New York as soon as possible. You're right, Dad. That's the plan. Sorry, got distracted. A week later, he calls me up. My dad calls me up. He says, hey, maybe you should have Monos show us that building. Let's take a look at it. I was like, aha, all right. So we go in, and within a matter of weeks, we were starting to work on the building. And, it was a few days that we realized that we had a lot more to do than we had first anticipated, and there's no reason for us to be doing all this work to a building that's not ours. So we, took out the loans and borrowed the money to buy the building and to do we spent quite a lot of money just to get the place to an opening point. And 2 to 3 months, Monos? No. It took us nearly a year to get open. We started working at the beginning or the end of February that year, and it took us until December 13th. Friday the 13th, by the way, of that year. So almost an entire year of working on this to actually get open. That was a hard year. And so Mike and I had to have jobs, to live while we were trying to build out this restaurant. And so he and I actually worked at Metropolitan Distributing, which at the time was the Miller Lite distributor around town. And we also worked at Lone Star Steakhouse, just like whatever we could get job-wise to get us through. And it wasn't until October that we both got to a point where we had to quit our jobs so that we could spend as much time as possible getting this finished.
What year is this?
This is 2002.
Okay.
Yeah. And we had set our first opening date as like March 15th. And then we pushed it back. What about April 21st? Yeah, April 21st. Now, there was no Facebook. There was no real social media or anything close to that. We barely had cell phones, at that point.
It was the big, like the ones with an 8-foot antenna. How you doing?
No, they were actually kind of nice. They were, especially the Sprint phones. They were kind of nice. They just, there was nobody to call because everybody's phones were at their homes, so they weren't picking it up like, yeah, my pocket's ringing. No, you would leave them messages, and it's like, yeah, call me back on my phone, but don't leave a message because I can't afford to call the voicemail. And
Did you have the 2-way 10-4? Roger that.
I didn't. I was very jealous of the people that did. I thought, wow, what a cool thing. But I never got the
that was a Nextel thing,
Nextel, right?
Yep.
Right. And those
Or
phones were
spend
so
a lot.
sturdy. Construction companies, those were the people that really utilized those.
I was gonna
things.
say my dad owned a construction company and he had like all the Nextel phones around
Yeah.
that time. So
They were so cool. They were so cool. I was always jealous of that.
Side note though,
Yeah.
we pulled up right across the street in the HHR, and Dan's like, "What is that ridiculous looking building?"
On the second floor.
yeah,
Not-
that's
not-
over the top. We've been wondering that because we've been here 10, 15, 20 times and we're like, what? We just realized we're like, okay, but what is on the top of this
Yeah.
building?
I did not say, what is that ridiculous? But
But
You were thinking it. I know you were thinking it because it
It's a
is.
story though.
Believe it or not, and now this is a straight from Manos. I have no idea if it's valid or not. Either. So the building was built in 1910,
That sounds about right.
and I don't know.
Everything here.
I don't know what year the seal of the city of Toledo came out or was designed. Right. So I don't know if it's chicken before the horse or not, but chicken before the cart. So I don't know which was first, but according to Manos, the blockade house on the seal of the city of Toledo was modeled after this building. Or this building was modeled after the blockhouses that are featured on the seal. I don't know which came first or what was the inspiration for which, but once I've pulled that up and saw, once I was able to see on the city of the seal, that is exactly what it looks like, and it made a little bit more sense as far as the design of the building. But it is a completely ridiculous design.
So do you have anything like that upper third of the building?
Yeah, so there's above from this wall all the way over to that goofy looking spot. There's just rooftop. It's almost like they built the first section and then either ran out of money or just decided not to build the rest of it on the second floor. And so there's a small apartment in that space. Single level. There's a decent sized attic, which surprises me that in 110 years nobody's ever built up into the attic and made that a bigger space. But it's 3 small rooms, and I actually lived there for the first 12 years of Manhattan's. 6.5 years ago, I had to move. I had to get out because it was like living in a fishbowl. You couldn't sit in the living room with the light on or with the TV going in the summertime, and if somebody you knew was on the patio, it's like, "Hey Zach, I see your lights on up there." I was like,
Fine, I guess I'll go have a drink.
The first couple of years, I didn't actually have a door at the top of my stairs. So if I had accidentally left the downstairs door into the restaurant unlocked, people would just figure it was the bathroom, or they'd be curious and want to see it, and they'd just walk up, and the next thing you know, some strangers standing at the top of my stairs. I'm like, I got to get a door there. That changed my whole world. But moving 6.5 years ago changed everything. It was like, I didn't move very far away either. It's amazing the difference a block and a half makes. It's like living in a fishbowl.
All right, so back in, you said 2002, right?
Yep.
How different was Adams Street? I mean, there's so many great bars and destinations that
Right.
people come to here.
So the bars on Adams were wildly different. Wesley's was more of your neighborhood dive evening bar, happy hour bar, and would generally be closed by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Really?
Okay. The Georges and previously Moxie, nothing was in there until 2014. That was an empty space, so it was just a cool looking building, but never anything going on. Manos was a thing, but the attic and the back patio, none of that was. It was just downstairs. And if you had a business meeting and wanted to help out some really bored guys waiting for business meetings to come along so they could make some money, and then Brett's, and that was it. Brett's was always busy, but it had its clientele that wasn't really shared with, well, certainly not with us, and the crowd that hung out there would never hang out at Wesley's. It was a very specific crowd that went there, and you just never saw any crossover. You never saw any sharing of crowds between. Well, I mean, our crowd would go down there, but when we first opened, we were like a sore thumb. There was no mixing of what was going on the street already, and there really wasn't anything going on the street. It was dead, and there was no residential. I mean, Manos lived up here, and his employees lived in the apartments in the building. Nobody lived across the street except the owner of the building and his son. There was the year we opened, I think in 2002, they were just finishing up the new Cheney Flats, and they had just finished the Uptown Arts Apartments, I think either the year before or early 2002. And so in my mind, in my eyes, well, here we go. There's going to be 300 people living across the street from my restaurant, built-in crowd. Same with this right now. I mean, there's a news article, a news interview that I did when we were working on it. I said, well, I just noticed that, we got a lot of residential going up over here, a lot of residential going up over here. I said, this is a great spot to capitalize on, brand new, everything. And, lo and behold, those turn out to be Section 8, mostly Section 8. They were billed as artists' lofts and mixed residential, so some Section 8 and some market rate. And what really was the case was that they very quickly became 100% Section 8, which I have absolutely zero problem with, other than the fact that the people living there don't have the kind of disposable income to make a regular habit of the restaurant across the street. No matter how much the stuff cost, this was not an ideal residential situation for somebody trying to open a restaurant. And most of Manos's customers were Old West Enders and the West End. Most of Wesley's customers were the courthouse related people, the sheriffs and the judges and the lawyers. And the Brett's crowd was the 18 to whatever LGBT crowd. That, at least from how I saw it, wasn't, there wasn't a bar hopping crowd. They were going specifically downtown to go to Brett's, to have their dance fun, and to enjoy the nightlife that Brett's had to offer. There really wasn't anything else downtown to offer. I can't think of another place that somebody would have gone to go dancing downtown. I mean, even the nightclubs weren't a thing for the first 3 or 4 years. There wasn't really anything to do.
That's so interesting because, we started school here. I started school in 2015, 2016.
2016 for me, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like we've always known Adam Street is like the place that you go to bar hop to see a variety of different, specials, bars, people there and whatnot. And it's just crazy to think that it was very sectioned off like that before.
Yeah. And it wasn't something that you would ever see as somebody bar hopping from Manos to Manhattan's.
That's just inconceivable for me, honestly. Yeah, that's what people come to Adam Street.
The owner, and that's really what we worked for so long. The owner of Wesley's at the time when we first opened, I went down pretty early on, a matter of weeks or months after we opened. I went down there and I said, "Hey, there was an organization called Neighborhoods in Partnership."
Was it Micah then?
No. Micah's maybe 5-6 years he's been the owner there. At the time, I think his name was Jeff Gray, and then after that was Mike Roberts. I'll skip over that section.
Okay.
But Jeff had been running Wesley's at that time, at that point in 2002, for about 17 years. And pretty set in their ways. There had been a busier time, maybe 10 years before we had opened, and even then it wasn't a crowd that he wanted to share, or that worked between the bars. There were different pockets of action. And I said, hey, let's work together as bars to try and attract more people down to this section of Adams. And he was just like, I really appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm just not interested. I don't have the energy or the desire. I've been at this 17 years, and quite frankly, I'm probably going to be getting out of it in a few years. And I'm just like devastated. Like, I mean, obviously I can work with Manos, you know, he's the one that got me into this, and it certainly affect his business if I do well.
Was George's open at this time too?
Oh no, George's didn't open until 2014.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't even George's. It was Moxie by then. Moxie was the first place that actually developed that into a bar.
Okay, yeah. I was wondering because we actually did have them on the podcast before. I just was not aware if there was another bar there before. No? Okay.
No. So yeah, we went a solid 10, 12 years of nothing being in there before the Moxie opened.
Okay.
And the Moxie burned out after a year-ish, if they made it that long. Oh my gosh, those people were
Really?
lovely people. I really, I wanted them to succeed. I was really hopeful. But in the end, they had their own habits that were pulling directly out of the till. There was a place called, I remember now. There's a place called Alex Hamilton's. And if you want to know about Alex Hamilton's, Jen at Wesley's is the person to talk to because she actually worked there. But they were open for. She's a bartender at Wesley's.
Yeah, so we met her.
Yeah, we met her.
She's the manager too.
Yep.
But they had opened slightly before us, and it was in the place that Allcrumb's Bakery is in now. And they had opened for us, and maybe 6-7 months. They after a minute they closed, but it was like in the middle of the night. The owners, this husband and wife, loaded everything. I'm talking every bit of equipment, and made this an empty shell. They took the bar out, everything, overnight, and the next day it was like people are like, "You guys, it's open for lunch." There's not even a bar or stools or anything there. They just disappeared with all their shit. They were horribly in debt, which was something that we were for several years. Kind of the end of the Moxie was similar to that. Like all of a sudden they were gone. It skipped town. And
Is this around the 2008 like market crash? Because I know multiple people that may or may not have done that with their house.
Yeah.
They stripped the entire bitch and
Yep.
they took off in the middle of the night. Yeah, I mean, especially for Michigan.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I knew, growing up around Detroit, having jobs in the automotive industry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you wouldn't see that kid again in school.
Yeah. And that's kind of the similar circumstances. No, this was around 2014.
Okay.
2015 at the latest, because George's has already celebrated like at least 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say when we talked to him, I think he was at about 4 or 5, and that was about 8 months ago. He does a great job of operating his establishment, though. I mean,
George could have very, very easily just spruced up what was there and instead started over and created his own space the way he wanted. And he does a great business. And he's a joy to have as a neighbor. The way Micah is a joy to have as a neighbor, the way Amelia is a joy, and Zach Jacobs and the Poco Loco guys. I mean, it's the difference of being an island in 2002 to 2010, basically, before anything real started happening. The difference. It became very obvious to us pretty early on that no matter how good we were, we needed to raise the neighborhood up around us before we could do anything, before we could get the kind of volume that we really needed.
so is that when you kind of started seeing sales going higher, when everybody, when Micah came, when George came, when all these people came? Is that when you kind of started seeing like everything just going higher and getting better?
Yeah, around 2003 or 2004, a year or two in, I got to take into account that I lost 8 months of my life from a nervous breakdown after only a year and a half of being in business. We had been, I'd come into work at 3 in the afternoon, and I'd be leaving here at 4, 5 in the morning. It was a disaster. I could go on for hours about that. And just basically just kind of broke down mentally. And I actually went and lived with my parents for 8 months while I figured my brain out. It took me a while. It probably took me fully almost 2 years to really truly get back to myself from that breakdown.
If you don't mind me asking, did you ever seek professional help? Because I know now with like COVID, there might still be a stigma or not, and I don't know if that would have been beneficial to you or not, or if you did.
I did. I checked into the mental ward at the Toledo Hospital, and I was there for about 5 or 6 days over New Year's Eve, which was so depressing. I was sitting there. They let all the other loonies go. I was the only one. I was the only one that they didn't let go. Yeah. Later found out that it was partially my parents doing. They're like, please keep him over. We don't know. We don't know what he's doing. I was behaving very manically and very unpredictable, and I wasn't even making sense to myself. And I'd been very good friends with Deacon Tom over at St. Pat's Historic, and just I wasn't connecting with people, so I would go over and sit down and chat with him. And after a week or two of really kind of buddying with him, he sat me down and he says, I have a question for you. If I asked you to go check yourself into the mental ward at the hospital, I'm like, yeah. He says, would you do it? I said, if you asked me to do it, yeah, of course I would do it. He goes, okay, because I think you should. And I was like, then I better, And that day, I grabbed a bag of things and they dropped me off. And I'm sitting there on New Year's Eve and I'm watching the countdown. I got this one giant nurse and another giant nurse next to me, and the three of us are like joylessly watching the change of the year. And it's like, I was like thinking to myself, how? I was like watching them send home all the other people in the ward at the time, another half dozen people. And, I didn't interact with any of them. I was there for myself, and I didn't think I should be there, but I was committed to seeing it through. And they had put me on an antipsychotic that didn't agree with me. And before I even left there, they had started me on a different antipsychotic. And over the next month, that drug basically kind of shut my brain down and made me into a yes or no conversationalist. And I got really bad social anxiety, which was preposterous to me. I'm gregarious. I love people. I love meeting people and talking to people.
And your storytelling ability is pretty bar none.
Yeah, that sounds.
I'm so serious when I say this. Like, we have not had many people that can command a room and like understand, like, for like an observer to like understand the story and what you're telling to the degree that you're having is pretty impressive. Cool. You're a very great storyteller, and I think
that award worked.
I was gonna say, I think it might come from your film background. Honestly,
it could
very well.
I've always hated improv. Like, I've never been
Really?
a fan of improv. I mean, like, watching it. It's just like, for some reason I get nervous for the people that are doing it. Like, are they gonna be funny? Usually they're not. You want them to be funny. Like, oh man. Every once in a while you get somebody really clever. Like, who's somebody was like just always like quick with that response. It just made you crack up laughing. I've never been good at improv, and I don't like doing something I'm not good at. Or just trying to be good at improv to me sounds like an oxymoron. Like, I'm attempting improv. Antipsychotic drug shut my brain down, and for about 3 months I was taking it pretty religiously. And when I wasn't, if I had run out and I needed to re-up my prescription, it really like made me very anxious. And I had gone to live with my parents, and so that was in January when that started, and by May, maybe if it was even as late as May, it might have even been in March, because I couldn't believe I was comprehending, I could understand everything that was going on around me, but I had zero initiative, and I couldn't carry on a conversation without more than a yes and a no. And it was just like, it was so crazy to me that I couldn't keep going on a conversation. So I took myself off. It was either March or May. It started with an M. And I took myself off and more or less kind of put myself under observation and made sure that I wasn't doing or saying or acting in any sort of unusual way while I waited for this drug to slowly work its way out of my system. And, I'm like, hydrating really well and going on, and months go by and nothing's changed. My brain is still shut off. And I was really like terrified that I'm going to be this zombie the rest of my life, this conscious zombie.
So you consciously knew that you weren't performing at where you could be or
Right.
what your old self was.
Oh, absolutely.
That is such a paradox. Like,
It was crazy. I could see that I wasn't getting better. I wasn't improving. Nothing was changing. And I had months earlier gotten this out of my system and should be like, rebounding, coming back, and it's not. And so the reality of the situation is I was sitting there one day and I thought, this will not do. I'm not going to be this thing, this person that can't comprehend. And I said, you know what? There's probably a really good reason that you have a theater degree. You need to act like Zach. You need to pretend to be Zach. And for nearly a year, I was faking it, faking being me, forcing myself to conversate, to engage, and to interact the way I remembered myself being. And it was nearly a year before it was just natural. I felt like I didn't have to try to be me anymore. I was like, it was coming to me. That was scary. I thought for sure I was gonna have to be a fake the rest of my life just to feel normal, to feel like myself again. I credit weed aiding my creativity and the ability to reach deep for myself, because it would relax and settle my mind so that I could think, what would I do in this situation? How would I handle this situation if I was really me? And I think, ultimately it took that long for really the impact of the drug to work through and to get my synapses firing the correct way. But I faked it till I made it as myself.
But that year of
For a year.
faking it helped you in the long run.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, because it started with I finally because my parents would contact my friends and say, would you call him and encourage him to go out with you guys or something? And I'd go and I'd hang out with them and I'd just kind of sit there, and they'd do their best, and we'd go and I would pretend to have fun. But it was a while before I had gone to our employee boat outing. It's something we do every summer. We gather up all the employees and we take them out to the river and force them to jump in the river and get immunized. It was on that first trip, that boat outing that it was kind of like the first time when I was employing this, because I wasn't trying to be me. I was just trying to be a little social. And it was very difficult because I didn't have my contacts in. I'd been wearing glasses because I had developed ulcers on my eyes, because I wasn't taking my contacts out and taking care of myself before I had my breakdown. And so on top of this mental interruption, I had to wear glasses. So for me, wearing glasses, I was like standing behind a wall. No, I love that. I thought, well, this is okay because I like the way glasses look, right? I think they're cool. And I was like, immediately, I'm not only am I not able to communicate properly, but now I feel like I'm behind this wall and not seeing the world the way I normally see it when I'm wearing contacts. And it was just like, so everything was it was difficult to get through. And so that first boat outing was like this opportunity for me to sort of be social and be flexible. And it was shortly after that I was like, that felt pretty good. And if I can continue to kind of fake that, maybe I teach my brain how to be me again. And it took, like I said, quite a while, gradual increments, but really it wasn't until nearly a year later that I consciously said, I feel normal again. I feel me again. I don't have to try.
So was it hard to operate Manhattans during this time? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I wasn't operating Manhattans at that time. I was at home. I wasn't going anywhere. I would wake up, I'd watch Seinfeld at night. I'd have a beer, and every once in a while I'd go outside and have a cigarette. I mean, I didn't leave the house. I didn't have the desire to go anywhere. I would get anxious being around people, and which was insane to me because I love people. I couldn't imagine that social anxiety was ever a thing that I would feel, or a panic attack was ever anything I would experience.
I mean, being in theater and fine arts, your whole goal was to be in front of
performing
as many people as possible.
Bigger crowd, please.
Right.
I know.
Right.
I didn't want a crowd larger than one. It was completely contrary to everything that I felt that I was. It was so hard. It was so very difficult. And so the others that mostly my parents during that time, because by the end of the first year, my roommate Mike had burned out on Toledo and moved back to New York.
Really?
So
was he a partner in the business?
He
or
was the
anything,
original chef.
Okay.
He was the original chef, and after a year, he had burned out. I mean, this is a guy that was used to jumping on a subway and being able to get anywhere he needed to go at any point. But he never had a car while he was here. He never had a way to get around. And there's nothing within walking distance from this location at that time. Even the gas station was a 10-minute walk. And he just kind of he got into a bad place and ended up skipping town and going back to New York. And and then not long after that, I'm breaking down, and so it's like my parents are running this restaurant, and neither of them had really any restaurant background, and it was just like, luckily I had there were a few people here that, and we had brought in a new chef, and they kind of limped along. Not that my return 8 months later was any sort of big fanfare and I turned the whole thing around. No, it wasn't like that. We struggled bad, whether I was here or not, from day one until 2010. 8-9 years of being open before we even figured anything out correctly, and losing money that entire time. That's hard. And going through 2008, you mentioned that earlier. Yeah. We've operated on the principle that we chose not to participate in the recession. Well, we can't do that this time. We can't choose not to participate in the pandemic because there's no way around it, But our mentality of not participating in the recession, that was it resonated with the people that just kept coming out. They said, okay, they're not going to sit here and piss and moan. They're just going to keep going forward, and that allowed us to survive. And the idea that we were losing those first several years and borrowing from family, friends, anything we could do just to keep the doors open, that was a really, really hard decade, basically, of working harder at anything that you've ever done in your entire life and still coming up short. And it wasn't for any other reason than basic business principles. You have to have this much. If this is the size operation you want to do, you need this much in sales. And it wasn't until at nearly decade point that our sales got to a point that supported the operation that we were trying to do.
So you've made it 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time to own and operate a business. What positives have you learned along the way that you can tell other people?
That's an excellent question. Because oftentimes my tongue-in-cheek response is, don't fucking open a restaurant. I'll tell you that much. Well, if I had to do it all over again, would I do a restaurant? Absolutely not. Mostly because I didn't know what I was doing.
Right, exactly.
If I had the opportunity to open a restaurant now, would I do it? No, but I would be in a lot better position because I understand it. Right. There's a hell of a lot more than you can see on the surface than when you actually get into it.
But I mean, over half of businesses fail over the first 2 to 3 years.
Right.
So you kept going and going until you made it pretty much.
It's just stubborn. Just stubbornly refused to give up. Failure was never an option because that would really put. My mom said something in the first couple of years. She said, "I am not going to give up my life the way we've spent my dad's whole career of building up. He worked for Owens Corning and he built my mother, and he built a life that she had come to like, and she didn't want to change that. So we weren't going to fail. There wasn't even an option. We would figure out ways to get through until this was successful. And it certainly took a hell of a lot longer than we expected. But just that notion of, I'm not going to change my life because you guys can't figure out how to run this business. Like, okay, Mom, we'll figure this out. And really that kind of stubbornness is so, and certainly the generosity of people that helped us along the way is really the only reason we were able to stay open and not just crash and burn miserably and be in debt for the rest of our lives for something that never paid off. Very, very possibilities, very, actually more than likely possibilities is we should have failed several times over the course of the 18 years. I think one of those, what pieces of advice to give is don't give up easily. You're going to be faced, especially in this business and many other businesses, if you want to be in business for yourself, you can't give up easily. You have to understand that you're going to be working harder than anybody else to be getting a reward that is far less than everybody else is getting for doing way less work. It's really the best things in my life have come from this place, and it's not money. It's a wife. I met my wife because of this place. I met some of my greatest friends that I'll ever have because of this place. I've been able to reconnect with people I had lost because of this place. I've been able to demonstrate to myself just how hard I really can work and what I really have the potential to do because of this place. Am I sitting on a pile of money? No. Am I rich because of this place? No. Will I ever be? Probably not. I've gotten myself to a good point where I'm paying myself pretty well, better than I've ever, done, but I'm not making money hand over fist because of this place, and I don't know that it really has the potential to do that the way it is, the way it's set up. And that could be because I'm still, even 18 years in, pretty inexperienced with this particular business, with running a restaurant. There are people that run operations similar to this or different operations that are making tons of money on their restaurant. What have I not figured out yet? I don't know. I'm still looking for that. But the way we've been able to raise up the neighborhood, I wrote a law. I helped write the local ordinance for the open container zone here on Adams Street, which was then duplicated by downtown, duplicated by Napoleon, duplicated by Sylvania.
Lots of other cities in the state.
Places have taken what I worked on. Took me 7 months from start to finish to get that accomplished. To see people enjoying the neighborhood kind of the way we had built it to do is super gratifying. To see 20,000 people turn out for a zombie celebration, that's really gratifying. That's incredible. Am I making a lot of money on that? Not really. But the rewards are different. They're better than money. I should probably have more lust for money. I should. I've always been pretty content not having much money. And, I've lived pretty poor in New York City in the first several years of this business, and that never bothered me because what I was getting out of it was different than money. It was different than things that you could buy with money that was, nice places and nice cars and all the things, clothes, whatever people do with money that have a lot of it. Those were never the rewards I was seeking. What I was after was really great times. One thing I was able to recognize is that I can, one of the things that I really love about myself. What a horrible thing to say. Just, it sounds so arrogant, but I love the fact that I can take a situation that really is loveless and funless and bland and figure out some stupid way to make it fun or interesting or exciting. And with no money, with no extra help, I can create a fun situation. And I've been able to do that in this place quite often. and a lot of instances on the street. And so it's just, that reward is so much greater than money. I'd love to have the money. Believe me, it'd be awesome. But that's really what I've gotten out of it. And like I said, the people, obviously my wife is huge. It's the most important thing that's happened in my life. And I have this place to thank for that.
I mean, you can always print more money. You can't recreate memories. You can't print people. I mean,
no. I've had some incredible memories. A snippet is before we built this bar, there was only not this wall, but the middle of the bar was still mostly wall. Okay. And so just that side was a small L-shaped bar, and this mirror was on the far side, on the other side of the bar. So you couldn't see yourself sitting at the bar. Right. But if you stood up on the bar, there's you standing on a bar, And so you get up there with 2 or 3 friends after hours, late night, and just, watching each other dance on the bar was always, it was the dumbest thing. But we'd crank the music up and we'd have so much fun just doing that, It was little memories like that made up and make up what the history of this place means to me, at least, and the rewards and the advice. It goes back to prepare for something a lot more difficult than you. The advice I got before we even opened this place is don't open a restaurant. What are you, crazy? Don't open a restaurant. That's dumb. It's way more work than you could ever expect. And here, me as a 24-year-old kid, 24-year-old man, was thinking, how hard could it be? Yeah. Okay, I'm really prepared for hard work. I could do that. I work hard. Not even close did I know. Not by any measure of the imagination could I have known exactly how hard it would be and how unrewarding it was for so long. I was still making memories, even in the hardest of times. There were still these choice moments of joy and memory that were created. But the feeling of self-loathing and lack of self-worth as you work and bust your ass off to you're failing still, and you're failing, and you're failing, and you're failing. And how do you motivate to keep going other than just plain stubbornness that, I can't fail. What the hell would I even do? So my wife, we were hanging out at home the other night. No, a year ago, or no, it was earlier this year when, we were thankfully able to get one of the PPP loans that allowed us to maintain most of our staff and stay open instead of closing for a time and reopening. Mm-hmm. And we were kind of hanging out, and she goes, "So, worst case scenario, what if we have to close the restaurant down? What will you do?" And I was like, "Oh shit. I don't know how to do anything else. I know nothing. I have zero training in any other field because, if I had some training, it would have been nearly 20 years ago. I know how to do nothing. I don't even want to know how to do anything else. There's nothing else I want to do. So if we failed, what would I even do? I'm sure I'd figure something out. I can mow lawns. I'm really good at it. I could be a professional ski boat driver. Okay. There's a lot of call for that around here.
That'd be pretty awesome. Maybe not in Toledo, but some other places.
So that stubbornness of even in the face of ultimate failure, and just constantly having that negative. You're not making it. You're not cutting it. You're not cutting it. And my dad has always been very good about making sure I understood just how bad we were failing, because he's a numbers guy. Like he's a finance guy. So as we've gone on, we've always known where our finances are and how badly we're losing. And to get that reinforcement week in and week out of how badly we're doing, it was like. That really can drain on you. And just that stubbornness, like, okay, well, we're just going to keep going, and we're going to try and make these changes to see if we can't turn this around. and keep doing that for years before it actually does turn around. That's the only advice. People are what make Manhattans successful. The people that work here, and that the people that have made this place successful have been here. Some over a decade, some over 10 years. Other people have only been here a short time, to a year or two.
So what were you drinking over here?
That's straight up on the rocks is George Dickel number 12, which is a Tennessee sour mash, which is like a bourbon, but it's a different process, and it's not from Bourbon County, so you can't call it a bourbon. It's a similar process to bourbon, but and so a Tennessee sour mash. You're familiar with Jack Daniel's. Yep. It's sour mash like Jack Daniel's, only good.
I'm personally not a huge fan of Jack Daniel's.
As a former Jack drinker, now
I will drink
Jack for quite a while.
I'm not opposed to it.
Quite a while. And then I got off of that and was kind of just on the Jameson for a while. And now I'm back on the sour mash because I discovered Dickel. It's a little bit cheaper than Jack Daniel's, but the flavor is so much better. And it does really well by itself on the rocks. I enjoy it. I wouldn't shoot it. It's not really. It'll hit you hard as a shooter. So we shoot Jameson.
I was gonna say, I think the only whiskey I've ever shot was Jameson.
Yep.
You really can't.
That's literally Jameson's the only one I've like.
Maybe Crown Apple if you're feeling a little adventurous, but
I've had plenty of shots.
But just Jameson usually.
My family loves to. My stepdad's friend, he's in Canada a lot, and he'll bring back like the liters or plus of the Crown Apple, and we'll take shots of those pretty much all night. The Crown Apple goes down pretty smooth though.
How you feel the next morning though?
I feel fine. I mean, as long as you stick to like one or two things, you're fine. Once you start getting to 3+, that's when you're not good.
Well, no. So back to the Bullet. So I like the Bullet bourbon Frontier. Bullet Frontier is their bourbon, and I think it's an excellent flavor, very nicely balanced. The problem is, I get a little bit unpredictable. Like I get kind of amped up as I start to acquire the buzz. I get a little amped up and kind of say and do. Not major things, but say and do things that I wouldn't normally.
A little risky.
My filter has been completely removed, and now I'm saying and doing things I wouldn't necessarily do here or necessarily anywhere else. But it's definitely not here. I wouldn't say or do those things. So I'm forbidden by the staff and my wife from generally drinking any sort of Bullet Frontier.
Nice.
Well, so one thing I like about both Jameson and Dickel is a predictable buzz.
Okay.
Even if you overdo it a little bit, you know where it's going to take you, and as long as you're not mixing it with anything else, you can be assured of a lack of a hangover if you're hydrated.
All right, After Hours Nation, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to stay updated, you can check out our site at afterhourscast.com. Don't forget to tune in next Tuesday morning for our next episode. After Hours Nation, stay thirsty, my friends.